Chapter 19. Help yourselves to a little glass of blip juice, do! Rasco, come and drig like wild. Gretel, for that's who it must be, thought Sarah, grabbed the hand of a nearby guest and, silver miniskirt twirling, silver to match the hair framing her little round face, that wasn't a wig, but how could dye make hair shine like an old Georgian cream jug? She drigged her way into the mass of head-banging, shoulder-banging, belly-banging driggers. The dance left a lot to the interpretation of the individual dancers, which was just as well, since many of the alien body shapes Sarah could see would have found a more strictly formal set of movements impossible. Rasco, Gretel's partner, for instance. How could he manage to dance so nimbly, if a trifle thumpily, on feet like that? What had the doctor said? Parallel evolution? Sarah had had a maths mistress who was known as Porker, but Rasco would have won hooves down in a warthog look-alike contest. And the creature, person rather, one mustn't be speciesist, who was swaying about on 12 feathery tentacles, might have been happier with an old-fashioned waltz than with the floor-shaking drig thud of the off-the-beat drig beat. Nevertheless, the majority of the guests were young, beautiful, and Paraconian. Feeling overdressed in her trousers, the amount of skin on view, barely tempered by exiguous but exotic costumes, wouldn't have been out of place on a surfer's beach, Sarah managed to make her way to the drinks table, where Jeremy was accepting from a servant a surprisingly small glass of liquid scooped from a bowl, which bubbled and swirled like a mini maelstrom. Hey, he said when he caught sight of her. This is far out, man. Oh, for heaven's sake, Jeremy, she said. Where did you learn that? From your grandpa? No, but I mean, just look at the walls, all sort of coming and going, and rainbows, like the inside of a waterfall. That's exactly what it is, said Waldo. A party inside a waterfall? Indoors? Said Sarah. If that's what you want, he answered. Hang on, I'll show you. Hey, Gretel, he called out, as his hostess bumped into view. What is it, my little old toy soldier, my soldier boy? She called back. Have you got an ambience pluralizer? Insult me then, replied Gretel in mock dudgeon, as if I didn't sell the last share of my poor old widowed mother's inheritance. Waldo grinned. They're not cheap to hire, he explained to Sarah. Where is it? He went on to Gretel. It lurks behind the drinks, doesn't it, like a virgin at a blip do? Gretel and Rasco were swallowed up anew in the jerking throng of driggers. Waldo laughed. That's something I can't wait to see, he called after her, and went round behind the table, where a servant who had heard the exchange was removing a fringed silver shawl which was draped over a black box. This thing is delicious, Sarah. You ought to try some, said Jeremy, happily helping himself to a refill. Waldo looked up from the control panel of the apparatus. I'd go easy with that stuff if I were you, Jeremy. That's how it gets its name. It sneaks up from behind and blips you. He consulted a list attached to the top of the box. Here we go, he said, and pushed a pair of buttons. There were a few ironic cheers from the party, but nobody stopped dancing. Good gracious, said Sarah. We're in a sort of cathedral thingy, said Jeremy. They were too. The falling water, the wispy clouds of vapour, the rainbows, all had melted away, to be replaced by majestic columns and a high vaulted roof. Tall, narrow windows of royal reds and yellows and blues let in shafts of heavenly, almost holy sunlight, even though it was night outside. Holding parties in old temples was quite the thing for a while, when they were first sold off, said Waldo. But then nobody cared, so it fell a bit flat. He pressed another couple of buttons. At once they were in a large clearing in a forest. There was a smell of wet leaves, and even over the heavy music the sound of jungle creatures could be heard. Of course! It was the same as the view from the window in the apartment, and for that matter— "I get it," said Jeremy. "It's like the desert at Space World, sort of projected." "That's right," said Waldo. "Recorded, like experienced reality, and projected into our brains." He pressed 2 more buttons. This time they found themselves under a grey, threatening sky on the heaving deck of a ship at sea. Sarah could even feel the spray blown onto her face and savour its strange taste on her lips. Yet when she put up her hand, her skin was dry. There were shouts of protests all round, led by Gretel herself. "Enough, enough," she cried, all humptified and thrum. Drigging on a boat deck. At boats I draw the line." She snapped her fingers, and the music stopped, leaving no sound but the howling of the wind and the expostulations of the guests. "You want us to be seasick, then?" she said, coming over to Waldo, with her partner clumping along behind her. Her teasing tones were belied by her expression. "Sorry," said Waldo, and hastily pressed 2 more buttons. At once, Gretel's little girl face lit up. "Better," she said. "Oh, inordinately better. Oh, consummately better." Sarah looked round in astonishment. The lighting had dropped to a sensuous red. The new low ceiling and plush crimson walls were covered with elaborately carved shapes, which managed to be at once abstract and plainly erotic. Gretel moved close to Waldo. "Thank you, Waldo Rodley," she said huskily. "A moon brothel just suits my mood. It makes my skin feel all sliggly-hoo." She moved even closer. "All over," she said. Well, really, thought Sarah Jane. In front of everybody, too. Waldo took a step to the side and walked round her. "Take a few deep breaths," he said in a hearty voice. "It'll soon go away." Gretel was unabashed. "Brrr," she said, pretending to shiver. "You're as cold as an ice lizard, you are. Never mind. We're going to watch the semi-finals of the games later. I've had the pluralizer hooked up to the stadium transmission. That'll heat you up." "Why?" "Why? Because it's exciting, that's why." Jeremy looked up as he took his 3rd glass of blip. "What games are those?" he said, in a slightly out-of-focus voice. "The games I told you about." "The killing games?" "Yes," said Waldo grimly. "The killing games." "Oh, law," thought Sarah. Did they have to stay? The prospect of watching people hacking each other to death quite took away whatever party spirit she had managed to conjure up. "And what's wrong with killing games?" said a voice, a deep voice, an impossibly deep voice. Waldo turned. "Oh, I might have known you'd want to join in," he said. "Sarah, Jeremy, this is an old sparring partner of mine, Rasco Heldel." Before either of them could say hi, or perhaps how do you do, the heavy porcine face frowned and spoke again. "I said, what's wrong with killing games?" Sub-Controller Dogar took his pleasures quietly. He was a watcher by nature, an observer he would have called himself, even if an uglier, out-of-fashion word sometimes brushed across his thoughts. He certainly would never have chosen to go to a blip party, though he sometimes had a sneaking envy of the young. Nobody seemed to take any notice of the 12 Commandments these days. They just did what they felt like. But if he'd found himself at one, the last thing he would have done would have been to join in the drig. True, he experienced a faint sense of physical release as he felt the rhythmic spasms of Rasco Hedel's muscular body. But even at the reduced level used for surveillance, the volume of the music, if that's what they called it, and the relentlessness of the jolting soon made him feel quite nauseated. Vice Chairman Tragan had removed his own headset as soon as Grekel hauled Heldel onto the dance floor. He sat watching with his pale mauve eyes, waiting for a signal from Dogar. Thankfully, the dancing stopped at last. Dogar, listening hard for Rudley's voice, heard him say, "Killing games," in a disapproving way, and, as he found himself speaking in turn, in a heavy, booming voice directly to the captain, he waved frantically at the vice-chairman, who had once donned his helmet. By this time, Heldel was saying for a second time, "What's wrong with killing games?" Dogar waited tensely for Rudley's answer. "I don't like them, that's all," he said. Dogar spoke with the nervous urgency of the inefficient. "Is that enough? Shall I send in the patrol?" "No, no," Tragan answered impatiently. "That's just an expression of feeling. That's not nearly enough yet. Shush." Rudley's remark had occasioned a chorus of protest, not least from his hostess. "But the games are a flame-out," she said. "Everybody hots at the games." "That's one of the things I detest about them," answered Rudley. "What do they do to us? Filling us with hate and lust." The vice-chairman's face erupted in a surge of bumps. "His father, a temple guardian, didn't you say?" Dogar nodded. "Dead now?" "Typical temple cant," said Tragan. "I certainly hate that Genhega," said Grekel. "I hope the champion rips his liver out." Sarah could hardly believe the tide of viciousness that all in a moment rose from the company. With the music stopped, the raised voices had attracted the attention of a large number of the partygoers, who seemed to be divided equally between the supporters of the unbeaten champion and his challenger in the semi-final, Genhega. She watched with horror the snarling, antagonistic faces round her. Never mind about watching the mayhem at the games. They were ready to tear each other apart. "There you are, you see," said Waldo. "You actually want to see their guts spilling onto the sand. What's wrong with you all?" "Nobody asks them to fight. It's their own choice," said Heldel. "You think so?" said Waldo. "Bond servants promise their freedom, lower class morons bribed with a bundle of shares, criminals threatened with the hunt. What sort of choices are those?" Grekel glanced round her party, which seemed to have come to a standstill. She changed her tone. "But, sweet little old Waldo, think of the money the corporation makes. The last games alone upped our dividend by nearly a quarter." Waldo seemed even more disgusted. "You think it's right that the corporation should kill people just for the sake of a bit of extra profit?" he said. "That's better. That's a lot better," said Tragan. "Is the patrol standing by?" "Outside their door, Vice-Chairman." "Of course it's right," Heldel was growling. "It's a perfect example of how the market works." Waldo looked as if he would explode, but Heldel bulldozed on. "The fighters sell their skill, the corporation sells the show, the audience get what they want, and everybody's better off into the bargain. What's wrong with that?" Waldo was now really angry. "I'll tell you what's wrong with it," he said. "It turns people into things. That's what's wrong with it." Grekel giggled nervously. "You'll be telling us it's a sin next," she said. "It is a sin," Waldo said passionately. "It's a sin against life. It's a sin against the spirit. The government ought to stop it, but they're in it up to their necks." "Got him," said Tragan. "Go, go, go!" Dogar shouted into his transmitter. The appalled reaction at the party was violently interrupted as the door flew open to admit 4 purple-uniformed patrolmen. two of whom, to Sarah's horror, were holding hack on straining leashes the creatures, or their doubles, she had last seen on the spaceship. The crowd fell silent, their instinctive recoil of fear stopped by the command of the patrol leader. "Stand still, everybody!" With a snap of his fingers, he quietened the snarling beasts. He strode to the central group, his boots sounding a menacing echo as he crossed the empty dance floor. "Which is Rudley?" he said. Waldo stepped forward. "I am Waldo Rudley," he said. "Waldo Rudley, you are under arrest." "What? Whatever for?" "Gross violation of the Treason Act." "This is ridiculous. I'm captain of the Presidential Guard." Was there a glimmer of satisfaction as the patrol leader replied? "The law knows no favourites," he said. "You've been speaking treason. You are under arrest." Sarah could hold back no longer. "But all he said was silence." Grekel breathed in Sarah's ear. "Keep quiet, or they'll take you too." As Waldo was marched away, he called back, saying, "Listen, everybody, things don't have to be like this. It's not to—" But his voice was stopped by a vicious blow. As the door closed, Sarah turned to Grekel. "What happens now?" she said. "Where do they take him?" But Grekel behaved as if she hadn't said a word. Limning away, she called out, "Music, please, Monty," and then, raising her voice over the chatter, she went on, "Now, come on, everybody. There's oodles of blip juice left. I want everyone out there drigging themselves blat." The drig music started again, as insistently as before, but with a more sensual swing, in tune with the mood brothel background. The guests started to move to the offbeat rhythm, and in no time the party had thankfully resumed, as if the irritating hiatus had never occurred. "But we've got to do something," shouted Sarah over the din. "What is there to do? He asked for it, and he got it," said Heldal. "But he only said—" Sarah was interrupted by the shrill, almost hysterical voice of Grekel. "Stop it, stop it, stop it! You'll have them back again. I won't have my party spoiled by that odious young man." She became aware of the glances of the nearby guests, and visibly controlled herself. "Grab yourself a glass of blip, and put that webbler to sleep-o," she said in more normal tones. "Come on, Rasco, drig time," she added, pushing the heavy bulk of her partner onto the red-lit dance floor. As Heldal abandoned himself to the mind-numbing sensual beat, he called back to Sarah his final thought on the matter. It might have been drowned in the cacophony of the drig-drig, but Sarah heard it as clearly as if it were resonating through the silent caverns of one of the alien moons. "Forget him," she heard Heldal say. "He's dead."